Hi, this is Dan Jurgens, and you are listening to the All Star Superfan podcast.
The dreams and the opportunities that she missed me.
Michael Knight, a young loner on a crusade to champion the
After the break, water that floats on sound.
He looks like any other 19-year-old college student.
I wouldn't want you doing anything foolish that might tip off who you really are.
The girls think he's cute.
I really gotta go.
But the bad guys think he's a wimp.
What you do, college boy? Take some get tough pills?
And that's a mistake. Superboy! Now, the superhero of the 90s is here on Earth. Don't mess with Superboy!
Schuster! Hello and welcome back to the All Star Superfan podcast, the podcast that delves into the bodacious 85-year legacy of the Man of Steel, including those times where, due to legal reasons, we have to refer to him as the Boy of Steel. I'm one of your hosts, Rob O'Connor, and I'm joined, as always, by my Schuster University fraternity brother, Mr. Alan Burke. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am good. How are you, Rob?
I am super. I'm here in Schuster University. I'm in college. I've got my mullet. I've got my plaid shirt. I've got my Casio watch. And I am ready to hear from Mr. John Newton.
You forgot the skateboard. Do you have your skateboard?
I did forget the skateboard, yeah. Welcome back to All Star Superfan, by the way. We've been away for a while, but this is an episode that we've kind of had in the fridge for a while. It is an interview with an actor who has actually played Clark Kent and Superman in live action. The second of two interviews that we've had like that on this podcast. This is an interview with John Haymes Newton. I was very delighted to interview him earlier in the year. Myself and Alan, I think, reached out to him like over a year ago.
Yes.
Never heard anything back. And then I was on Anthony's show talking all about Superboy, and I think I mentioned how much I loved John Haymes Newton in season 1, and I genuinely mean that. All respect to friend of the show, Gerard Christopher. If I had to pick, I would probably choose John over Gerard, just because I really, really like his performance in season 1. And after that recording with Anthony, I thought, geez, I must reach out to him again. And we did. And then we heard back from him and he was like, oh yeah, well, as luck would have it, I'm doing this other interview and I'd be happy to fit you guys in afterwards. And we jumped on it. Unfortunately, Alan, you weren't around. Do you remember why?
Yeah, so basically when he got back to us, he was like, yeah, I'm actually doing, I don't really talk about Superboy too much anymore. And I don't really have much of a want to talk about it much in the future. But I happen to be doing an interview tomorrow. And if you want to interview me, you can interview me after that. And it was kind of this is your shot. If you don't take it, we may not get this opportunity again. And I was working that day at the time that he could do it, and I just couldn't get out of work. So unfortunately, even though I was very enthusiastic and tried very hard to be there to join the interview, I just, the logistics of it, I could not make it work.
You were heartbroken not to
because I have this kind of bucket list of, I want to meet as many people who've donned the cape. It's a small group of people who are still with us who've donned the cape. I want to know what that experience is like, and I want to talk to these people, as many of them as I can. And John was definitely on the list, but it's just c'est la vie. It's just the way it works out sometimes.
Well, Alan, I've got some good news for you. I actually have the actor right here beside me who played Superman in the 1975 TV movie version of It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman, the Broadway musical version that you love so much. He's right here. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. No, I'm only joking. Apologies to that actor. You're more than welcome to come on the show anytime. Will we have a listen to a little bit of John Haymes Newton on All Star Superfan, Alan?
Sounds good.
So welcome, Mr. John Newton.
Hey, how's it going?
We are delighted to have you. Most of our listeners know by now we are big fans of Superboy, and I, in particular, am a big fan of your season. So thanks so much for joining us.
Wow, thank you. You're being nice, but I appreciate that.
Genuinely, anyone who knows, anyone who's been listening, I'm a big defender of Superboy season 1. But we'll get into that. I'm going to start off by asking something we ask all of our guests on this show. Growing up, I suppose, what would have been your introduction to Superman? Like, what was it? Was it something that was part of your youth?
It was only in the sense of one experience, which I've shared before. We would go to my grandparents' house, like most kids do, and they'd have their room of toys, and they had a basket of comics. And I remember one comic just stood out, like it indelibly burned into my psyche, and it was a Superboy comic with Superboy in the ring. He's punching the bad guy. So there's one of the boxers was, hitting below the belt or, doing something mean. And Superboy goes, "You bad man." And he punches. And something about that just burned into me. I can't explain it. I don't know why or what that was about. Maybe some cognition or who knows. But just something about this little, it was literally a super boy, like almost super toddler. But he was standing up for what was right and fighting for injustice and sticking up for the weaker opponent, and I don't know, I just love that. So that was kind of like a weird inspiration for me in some ways. So I'd wear a cape around sometimes, but I didn't watch the George Reeves, Kirk Allen stuff. It was black and white, I was more into like Wild Wild West and Gilligan's Island, like every American kid my age. But so, yeah, that was probably pretty much it. And of course I saw the Superman movies when they came out, with Chris Reeve. The first two I liked, the others were okay, but not so okay. But
I'm a big defender of those two, by the way.
Well, they're fun. They're tongue in cheek, right? Gene Hackman is so good, and I don't know. Was he in the third and fourth too? Was Gene Hackman?
He's in the fourth. He's Robert Vaughn is in the third. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So there you go. Alan, my co-host, who can't join us tonight, he's a big Superman 3 guy. I'm a big Superman 4 guy. So between us,
Richard Pryor was in the fourth one, right?
He was in 3. Yeah.
3. Oh, third one. Okay, sorry.
And so I suppose you mentioned there the sense of right and wrong. Was that was something sort of permeating throughout your youth? Was that fair to say?
Yes, and it was more the being bullied. Like I was always bullied. Ruthlessly. I'll spare you the details, but so there was always this kind of part of me that would probably fantasize about being the strong guy, being the guy who could fly, or the superhero, right? Like that would take me away from all this bullying that just was ruthless. And it made me who I am, which I'm grateful in the long run, but my God, I don't know how I got through it, to be honest with you. So one of those things, but I think we all have a superhero within us in some form, right? Or at least we hope to. And so it was kind of like that thing, the bullying thing, being able to stand up for those who couldn't, and also stand up for myself.
Absolutely. And am I right in saying you have martial arts training? Did any of that stem from that?
That's great. So yeah, absolutely. So I was in New York City, and I just moved there, and I'd just be like walking, and the most random bullying. It was like I was attracting, and I had this person backed into me in their car. They backed into. I'm like walking on a sidewalk, and they back into me, and I'm like, "What are you?" I'm walking here,
I'm walking here.
He gets out with a baseball bat. He starts coming at me. And I'm like, I can't defend myself. I literally walked straight to this Japanese martial arts studio that I walked by several times, and I signed up that day. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't live in fear anymore. So I feel like the martial arts kind of helped me with the Superman portion of the Clark Kent Superboy thing. As finding that inner Zen kind of, thing. I really do feel like it. And it also helped me. You'll see with the flying, there's actually a little bit of martial art kind of stuff coming in. These are things that we train in, and it unconsciously came through a little bit with some of my, it's just, I don't know, I didn't mean to, but I see it sometimes, when I see a picture or something.
I've literally written down what was the genesis of the karate chop flying.
Oh my God, I didn't do it on purpose. I promise. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't something I planned. That's embarrassing.
I love it though. It's unique. You're the only one who does it. You kind of have your arm out like sort of in front of your face. It's sort of an aerodynamic kind of thing. It's cool.
Well, that's the other thing. I'm thinking about what's causing me to turn. So there is that I did think about because I'm a pilot, right? I was a pilot then, and as a kid, I was always fascinated when you put your hand out of the window in the car when it's moving, and how like just moving my hand would cause I do that all the time when I was in the car. So maybe that came through too. So
interesting. And Christopher Reeve was a pilot. I don't know if you know that.
yeah, I do know that very much so. He flew helicopters and fixed wing, and I never got my rotor license, so he did.
So I want to ask about acting then. Am I right in saying that Superboy literally was the very first acting? It seems to be the first thing on your IMDb, or was there anything before that?
Well, IMDb doesn't include commercials, so
Okay.
I did some national commercials for like Levi's 501s, and I did a lot of I did theater. But I think that was my first. I don't think I'd done a guest spot or anything before that. I think that was my first job. Yeah.
And so for anyone who doesn't know, Lynn Stallmaster, who cast the movies, actually cast you. Am I right in saying that, or was it just the company, the Lynn Stallmaster company, that cast you, or did you meet him?
So that's a really funny story. So the synchronicity, I have so much bizarre synchronicity in my life. You can't make it up, and the odds are in the trillions to whatever. But literally, I'm home from New York City in North Carolina, visiting family. We go to the beach, and I'm like, well, the studios in Wilmington are only an hour away. And I was like, oh, I'll just drive there for the day. I happened to go for the one day. Lynn Stallmaster just happened to be there. The casting company, which had no appointments, they're like, I was like, do you have anything I could read for? It was like a random comment because it's like nobody walks in. But the talent pool in North Carolina is probably a little small, and I come from New York, so they're probably impressed. Who knows? We're like, yeah, well, we're doing this movie Weekend at Bernie's. Lynn Stallmaster's casting.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, and I knew who he was, right? Because I was like, he's a huge casting person at the time. And so I think they said, here's some material, and I literally walk in like an hour later, and I read for it, and he goes, I could give you this role in this movie. It was for like a lifeguard, had 5 lines or something. But would you be interested in doing a TV series? I just graduated from my 2-year acting program in New York City. And I was like, yeah. And so he hands me material. They'd been looking for Superboy. They'd seen 1,000 or who knows what, and they hadn't found that person yet. And they're like, here's some material. Go out, come back in. He filmed it, recorded it, and sent it to probably Florida or New York. I can't remember. But anyway, I was screen testing like in a few days and got the job. It was bizarre. I just happened to be there that one day he was there.
I have to ask about that screen test because that's on the DVD, I think, and it's actually on YouTube as well. You seem really confident in it. Like,
I can't imagine. I think I have seen that. I think I did see that somewhere, that audition. I can't watch anything I've auditioned for. It's so painful. But I do remember, like, they didn't know how to put the cape on me, so the cape straps on the outside is what I vaguely remember. And it was Chris Reeve's cape, and he's 6'4", and I'm barely 6 feet. And the underwear was 70s style. So the underwear on the Chris Reeve's costume, it came to about here. And I say underwear, it's part of the costume, but he's wearing the underwear on the outside.
Their underwear, yeah.
Let's be honest. So that was interesting, and that was one of the things I said, hey guys, because they were literally taking Chris Reeve's costume when we were doing the show, and the wardrobe was designing the new costume. I said, please, this is the 80s. You got to bring the underwear line down, because they were going to keep it as Chris Reeve, and I'm like, that's 70s. That's not. No. So I did have that input. Thank God.
And I did read an interview with you somewhere that you said you found a little bit odd that the show was called Superboy and not Young Superman. Did they ever kind of sit down and explain that it was a rights thing, or did they just kind of, was that all hush hush? Or
No, Elia told me one day. I was like, why didn't you guys call this Young Superman? Because it's so much sexier than Superboy. Because my 2 older brothers growing up, it was the boy. They always called me boy, and it was like an insult. It was an insult. You're a boy, and they'd be, I'm a man. That was because they were much older, and they always made the distinction that I was a boy. So when I got Superboy, it was almost like insulting because it brought all that back up again for me. So I was like, come on, why can't we call it? And then of course because they licensed it to the canon, for the films. But and I understand it is what it is. But I also knew it was its own comic. So
yeah, no, absolutely, it's a huge part of the mythos. And so tell me a little bit about meeting Elia Salkind for the first time, because he strikes me as a very kind of dynamic, kooky character.
he is such a dynamic, kooky character, and I would say that to his face, and he'd laugh. I actually was at his house, and before we moved out of Los Angeles 8 years ago, we live in Colorado now. I went over to his house, and we had so much fun, and we talked about everything. And he had this. You know what absinthe is?
Yes, of course I do. I'm Irish.
Yeah, okay, so he had the real stuff with they do the smoke and they light the thing and you're supposed to get like some weird, almost like a psychedelic thing out of it. I don't know. So they were doing that. It was like you said, kooky and perfect, and Euro, because he's like he always seems like he just came off the plane from like Spain or the south of France or something. He has that vibe and the hair. And is he still alive?
He is, yeah, very much.
He is,
so,
okay, yeah. So I didn't know. I'm assuming he would be. I just didn't want to say things if he's passed away and I'm saying something that's current tense when he's not with us anymore. But so yeah, he was interesting. And the first time I met him, he was talking about Clark needed to be in all white. And we had this conversation. He's like, heroes wear white, and I was like, no, pimps wear white. You don't. He doesn't have to wear white, Ilya. People will know he's a good guy, I promise you. But I just remember there was this like kind of interesting, almost like an old school, and not in a negative way. Like he's classic, the Zorro.
Like the Lone Ranger or whatever.
Exactly, that whole thing. Exactly.
That makes sense, because those early promo shots of you dressed as Clark, you're wearing that big white shirt, aren't you?
Yeah, probably. There was a white shirt. I don't remember everything, but yeah, I think it was white. And most cinematographers hate white. Like they don't want you to wear white because it's so hard to light and it doesn't show texture and it doesn't read well, we'll say.
Absolutely.
But anyway.
One of the things my co-host Alan is always interested in is knowing that feeling of walking out onto a set wearing the Superman, or in this case, the Superboy costume. And please be as brutally honest as you like here. You don't have to worry about, crushing my dreams or anything. Can you describe any kind of memories you have of feelings you had stepping out onto that set with that cape on and the history of it all and all that kind of stuff? Did it stir up a sense of anything in you?
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of responsibility. There's a sense of, but it's like the first day I wore it, I remember the first, either I'm transposing things or the first time I was on set with a Superboy costume I was in a swimming pool and I fly out of the swimming pool. So it was a costume. It would get waterlogged and would just sag down. It was like, and they destroyed this costume, but I had to be in the swimming pool and I fly up out of the swimming pool.
I know.
So when you're wearing that costume and you're wearing the flying harness, which is this bulky thing that goes underneath inside the costume and it cuts into your groin. And over time, it would literally, and because I was in the swimming pool all day, it literally was like I was cut in the crevices of where your legs join. I don't know what you'd call that, in the groin area. The straps that came through, because I was literally in the pool for hours and then just in and out, and it was cutting into me, and it became so painful. So when you walk in that costume, when you're wearing the flying harness, it gives you this hourglass, not very masculine shape, and so it's not always like, here I am on set, I feel like a hero. It's a little bit like, but when you just wear the costume, what we call the walking cape, walking costume, right? It was great. It was fun. It was fit well. I was in good shape and. Younger than I am now. So, but yeah, it was interesting. I had a cup in there too, which was kind of fun. I in retrospect, I think they probably could have given me a smaller one because some of the pictures, it's like, we should change his name from Superboy to Super something else. I don't know. But anyway, that happened. Nothing we can do about it now. It's all.
I'm reminded of a story Margot Kidder told on one of the DVDs where she said that Alexander Sawkind was looking at different cups for Christopher Reeve for the first movie, and he had this thing that he would go around saying, he has a big one or he has nothing. So I'm guessing it was probably the same for you.
Yeah, that's funny.
Can you tell me about you did kind of allude to this, and I have heard you talk about it a little bit in previous kind of interviews I've listened to with you, that they were really kind of learning how to make a TV show in those early episodes. And I don't know how experienced was the crew at that stage, because it was a brand new studio you were shooting on in Disney MGM, wasn't it?
Yeah, Disney didn't have a lot to do with it. We were more leasing the stage, and they weren't as supportive as you might want them to be, just because it wasn't a Disney character. Disney's all about Disney characters, and I don't know that they've ever allowed a non-Disney character, and so I think that's one of the reasons why they did move it to Universal after I left.
Yeah.
But the crew was a mishmash of very talented stunt coordinators. The flying effects guys were Bob Harmon, and they'd done the Superman movies, and Roger Rabbit. And they were very talented. We had lots of crew that were very talented, but also lots of crew like the PAs and just a lot. It kind of came together, but it was finding that it takes some time. When you have the mix of crew like that for our cinematographer was phenomenal, Orson Ochoa, but there were some other, so as it came together, it did feel like we were finding our own way, and the early scripts weren't great. A lot of times they'd hired some writers from the 60s and, were friends, I'm sure, of Elia and whoever, but I don't know that they were really kind of as hip as we maybe needed or wanted. But that changed, with the second pickup of 13 that I did. The scripts got so much better, and I feel like the show got so much better, and I got better. So
yeah, I don't know if this is something you hear a lot, but I quite like that initial 13 because they're so grounded, and it's just Clark Kent, the journalist, and he's dealing with these social issues, and he's going around writing stories about them, and for the love of me, I don't know why I like it so much, but that basketball episode I just find so charming, where you're flying around the basketball court. Do you remember filming that? Do you?
There's certain things you can't forget. Your first kiss, first time you got your butt kicked, first time you had to fly back and forth and referee a basketball game.
Amazing.
Yeah, so someone else mentioned that, at least they tried, right? In other words, I didn't have to fly. I could have just stood on the basketball court. I got great vision. I can, referee the game. I could have run. I think I might have run fast back and forth. Did they do that?
You did.
Okay, they did. Okay.
Yeah.
But the flying thing was just, it was just funny.
But you know what though, the flying on that show from the start was, and I say this, people are sick of me talking about how good the wire work was in that show. It was incredible, and no other Superman show had wire work like that ever. Even the new one now, it's all CGI, and it's just a different thing. So I get how painful it must have been, but it still looks great to this day.
It's really different. So the harness that you wear, I was describing it earlier, but it comes down a little bit on the thighs. It's kind of rigid. So to land, I practiced before we started filming and all that, but me as a martial artist, I really feel like that helped, because your center of gravity is crucial. And if you don't, it's so hard to kind of come in where you land on your feet and then walk, and then they cut to you without the harness. But to get that dynamic where you're flying and then you get your weight back without making it look like that's what you're trying to do. Like to make it look organic. So I feel like that's maybe one of the things I was really good at. Maybe I'm imagining that, but I'd say it's better than my acting. But that was interesting. And I see movies where people are flying and it's not CGI, and I can see exactly what they're going through.
Yeah,
because the wires come up here too, so you can't hit the wire. There's so much going on. People don't realize how complex it is to make it look natural, like you're actually flying.
I honestly think you did a great job at that, and to your earlier point, I think you can see that you become more experienced over the course of the season with it as well.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure.
Looking at the show, obviously you mentioned there that there was a shift halfway through, and they started doing way more kind of sci-fi stuff. The Revenge of the Alien is a great two-parter. It's one of the best two-parters in the whole show, even after you left and stuff like that. I think it's really, really great. Any kind of highlights from that era?
There was definitely so many better episodes in that second set of 13. I kind of don't remember everything. I do remember the Hollywood one was fun. That was a good one. I remember a lot of the really good guest stars that we had. It was fun to work with, just people that I like. The guy Enos from Dukes of Hazzard, he was in one of them, and Dano from Hawaii Five-0 was in one, and
Abe Vigoda was in one, wasn't he?
From The Godfather, right?
Yeah.
And I loved working with him, and I never watched Barney Miller, which was the big TV show that he did, but yeah, there's just a lot of interesting people and characters, and the scripts got better, the dialogue got better. Something I mentioned on a recent interview that I just did, but talking about like in the early episodes, I would fly in and the extras wouldn't respond to someone who flew into a scene because they weren't told to. They would just keep walking by. And I was like, what gives someone their power is how people react to them, not them acting powerful. So like people need to be reacting, right? So they took that in and started doing that more. And
there's a great moment actually in Countdown to Nowhere, which is kind of the origin episode. It's about 5 episodes in, and you take off and it's this epic flight shot. And then they must have realized that nobody reacted. So they went back and got a cutaway of this girl just sort of looking up like this. And I always think, oh, they must have added that back in later on when they realized we've nobody reacting to it.
There's a couple funny things too. So we had this deal with one of the airlines back then was called Eastern Airlines, which was like a kind of more of a Southern airline. And I think US Air ended up buying them out. And is the US Air even around anymore? I don't think so. I don't know. But the point is, so we had this agreement where I think we got like free tickets or something, but we had to show the plane. We had to show an Eastern Airlines plane. Like, so there'd be episodes where there'd just be a random shot of a plane. And I was like, and it would have the Eastern logo on it. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't even make sense. Like, how did you just put that in the episode? Because they realized, oh crap, we have to put these shots of the planes in, and we don't know where it's going to go. So that was funny. The other thing is, it's been many years, so I can say this now. I won't get anybody in trouble. But they would use rental cars as the police cars, and they would put these light bars on top of them. And then they would do these chase scenes, and they had extras driving them, so they'd wreck their rental car. They had police decals all over it. And I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. I mean, you could just tell like the guy's coming around a corner and you know he's not going to make the turn. And I'm like watching and I'm trying not to laugh because I know what's going to happen. And sure enough, he hits the light pole. And I'm like, that's a rental car that we have to get back to.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, it's funny. I don't know why. Oh my God,
I can picture that chase scene in my head, and like it would come around the corner, but it'd be palm trees, and
I think it's on the credits. That's why I remember it. I vaguely remember the first version of the credits. They had that chase scene.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
It sounds to me like you very much have kind of a. I don't want to say like a mixed feelings on the show overall. What are your thoughts looking back on the experience?
Well, my mixed feelings are two. I would have made different choices as an actor. I would have played Clark more insecure a little bit. I didn't want to be Chris Reeve, right? I want to do what he did, but I also feel like there could have been a little more distinction. But I also feel like that's the character finding his way. Like he doesn't know that he needs to be a different person, so maybe it worked in a weird way. Yeah, that's so. As actors are never happy with their performances, and I look back now and go, I wish I'd done this and this and this, but. It was a tough time for me. I was kind of just going through a lot emotionally, and I was very immature in a lot of ways. And I'd say if I was arrogant at all, it came from severe insecurity. Okay. I wasn't like, rude to people or arrogant, like I'm so great or what. I just kind of think I don't know, maybe, I don't know I would have no idea how to put that into words to have it not sound really self-effacing, which I don't want to do. But yeah, I would just make some different choices probably. And I would have honored my contract, I wouldn't have left because that was, I look back on that and it's like, yeah, that wasn't right. Even though they promised more money and they kept saying they would and they didn't. And they said, well, we're going to recast, and I was like, well, why would you even say you're going to come up with more money? Well, we just don't have it now. And I'm like, really? And it wasn't like I was asking for a lot, just something, because I'm playing 2 characters doing all my own stunts. I almost died a couple times, literally almost died. I'm not being dramatic. And I'm like, they should pay me more than $2,500, or I think it was $2,750 for the second season, or the second 13. But they were like, no, we're going to recast. And so I was like, I'll call their bluff.
Yeah.
And they did recast. But one thing happened was I got a speeding ticket during the season. It wasn't a speeding ticket. It was like I was on private property. It was kind of silly, but I did get it. I never got a DUI, by the way. I know people have asked me about that, and someone on the internet, someone wrote in a book I got a DUI. I've never, on my life, never got a DUI, ever. I've never been stopped for a DUI. On my children. I'm not, you can, whatever. But I did get that ticket, and I made the mistake being young and stupid, I wrote a letter to the sheriff's department and said, "Hey, this ticket was improperly issued. I should have just gone to court and handled it the normal way, but I wrote a letter, and at the bottom of the letter, I said, and by the way, if you ever do any fundraising for charity, I'd be happy to." And I shouldn't have put that in the same letter. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, that was so stupid. So it looked like I could have been bribing, but all my life, it never crossed my mind. I wouldn't have been that stupid. It was just clueless. So they used that to try to say, well, you also, this happened. And it came up while I was in the middle between, what would have been the second season. And they're like, well, since you got, a little bit, this is embarrassing for the character. And we're going to recast. And I'm like, all right. But they'd already said they were going to recast before that. So I don't know if they were bluffing or they'd already decided to recast. Maybe they were already going to recast. But the bottom line is they did. So I didn't go back. But
two things I want to say about that. First thing is my co-host Alan, who again sends his apologies. He wishes he could be here tonight. He actually is a police officer. And he would never accept a bribe, but I do think if a Superman actor presented him with such an opportunity, it would give him a great dilemma. Well,
the bribe wasn't to a police officer. I'm not that stupid. It was a letter to the department about
the department. Okay,
the ticket was issued illegally, and then but in the same letter, I said if you guys are ever involved with charity fundraising or something like that, for the charity, not for the police department. I was never offering. I'm not that bad, stupid. You're not supposed to say stupid anymore. Sorry, I don't know what the word dense. So your buddy's a police officer.
He is, yeah,
nice,
and he's a big fan. He's a big autograph hunter and all that kind of stuff. So
that's great. That's great. Well, I have a lot of police officer friends, and I'm an active firefighter, and I do hazardous materials, and so I work a lot with law enforcement and.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do that now. I do firefighting now. So
that's amazing. So you really kind of, you may have said goodbye to Superboy. You didn't say goodbye to kind of protecting humanity.
Well, yeah. So as most firefighters will tell you, 90% of your calls are, smoke detector, medical, a lot of medical calls actually. We did up here in the mountains in Colorado. We get bicycle accidents, we get motorcycle, we get all kinds of stuff. So and sometimes fire, but it's not very often.
But before we move away from Superboy altogether, I am interested to know, you came back to do the DVD extras when the show was finally released in 2006, I want to say. And first thing I want to say is, if anyone hasn't listened to the commentaries you did with Elias Salkind, there's some of the funniest commentaries I've ever
I have to listen to that. I don't think I ever listened to that. Is it on the DVDs or?
They're on the DVDs for season 1, your season. You did a commentary with Elias Salkind, and they're so funny. You're just making fun of everything in the best way. Like, you're laughing with the show, and Elias Salkind can't keep up with you, and it's so funny.
Oh my gosh, I barely remember that. We did do that.
I'm guessing you were on good terms with him then. There was no kind of falling out or anything like that after what happened or anything.
I'm sure like right around the time, I mean, he would have been like, John, what are you doing? You got to come back to the show. Why are you, don't cut your hair. He would always tell me whenever we'd have a break. He's like, don't cut your hair. And I mean, I was at his house. Before we left for Colorado. Didn't I share that already?
You did. Yeah. No, I was
going to lose my mind, but
yeah.
So no, we didn't have any. It's also been a lot of time, right? Time kind of heals everything. So I don't know what he would have thought or said about me, or right after that, I have no idea. But I could remind him, like, you guys said you were going to pay me more money, you didn't. But that's really on me, because the oral stuff doesn't really count. It's what's in writing, and I left. And I that's one of my life regrets, is just not that I missed out on so much, but that I was out of integrity. That was wrong with me. That wasn't right.
Well, I am not just saying this, but you are my favorite of the two. I think you really did grow over the course of the season. And I've said this before, people can hear me say, and I really think you did a great job. So not that you need to hear that, but I just, I'd like to share that with you.
You're being nice, but thank you.
But obviously, since then, I know you've moved on to a very different career now, but you did some incredible work on TV. You were on some massive shows, CSI, Desperate Housewives. I want to talk to you about Melrose Place, because I'm a huge Melrose Place fan.
Yeah.
And you were on a chunk of that. You were on the very last episode, weren't you?
I did the last 26 episodes. I did the last season. I was a regular on there. So ended up marrying Kelly Rutherford. I ran Heather Locklear's company, and I was Rob Estes's brother. So, I had a big hand in all of that. Unfortunately, it was the last season. I hope they didn't end it because of me. No, I'm kidding. It just was coming to a close anyway, I think. But that was a lot of fun. Totally different. So to talk about the difference between coming on the set of Superboy, like totally, I don't want to say chaotic. Everybody did a good job, with the skills that they had. But it was just like finding their way, getting things rolling. And then going into Melrose Place was like mental. It was like a well-oiled machine times a million. You just go in. No job I've ever worked on doesn't call you in like 5 hours early. Like you sit around all day long. You're in the last shot. They brought you in the morning unnecessarily. But I get it. You're being paid, so you should have to be. They would call you. Your call time meant. And the first episode, I'm like, oh great, I have hours. No, I go into hair. I go into makeup. Go do a rehearsal, shoot, and start filming. It was like they didn't call me more than an hour early because they were that they had it down. Yeah. And I was like, that's cool. I am never going to be late for this show because you don't want to leave because normally you could be a half hour late. No one would even know other than the production assistant who keeps track of the time.
Did you have any dealings with Aaron Spelling himself, or was he over the show?
Yeah. I think I went to his house one time. He had like a party thing, a dinner thing. He knew me from. I did another a spinoff of Melrose Place called Models Incorporated.
That's right.
With Carrie Ann Moss from The Matrix.
Oh wow.
I worked with her, and she was super nice and cool. I run into her in LA, and she would just give you a hug, and she's like this big celebrity, and I'm like nobody. I'm like. Super, super cool person, super amazing. But we did this show many years before. So I knew Aaron from that. I also auditioned for him, and I think he wanted to get me on the show, and so he was probably the main instigator. But great, really, really just a nice guy. I mean, he's a classic, right, from the Charlie's Angels and all the great shows, and so
in addition to obviously Lex Luthor, Mr. Mixes Pitlick, you've also done battle with both Vanilla Ice and Chuck Norris. Vanilla Ice at the height of his powers, by the way. Can you talk to me a bit about Cool as Ice?
So that's interesting. So Cool as Ice, I play Nick the Dick. I like the bad guy, whatever.
Yeah.
So we filmed this movie, and Vanilla Ice is at the peak. I mean, he's like it was like mob scene wherever we went. I was like, wow, this guy's really big. Super nice. I mean, we'd hang out on set. I was like, a little starstruck because I'd seen the videos, and I was like, I thought he was talented, whatever. But then he gets in trouble during filming of the movie. So when the movie came out, his popularity had dropped. So the movie probably grossed, I don't know, it was Universal Pictures. But what's interesting is our director of photography, and I think it was his first job, was Janusz Kaminski.
Oh wow!
Now, do you know who that is?
It rings a bell.
Janusz Kaminski. Schindler's List. He does every Spielberg movie. He's probably considered one of the greatest DPs of all time. He is so brilliant. So I got to work with him, and I ran into him years later, and I was like, and he remembered me. I was like, first job, right? But just like Academy Award, I'm sure he's won many, many Academy Awards. Just absolute brilliant. So he was on that movie. So Vanilla Ice, yes. But it was a fun shoot. But it was a bummer that he got. The press really went after him with the whole thing, acting like he's not talented and not the real deal. And nobody's the real deal. Everybody's country music. Everybody's pretending. They're all playing characters pretty much, so who cares? But it happened.
I don't know how interesting you'll find this, but Vanilla Ice recently did a podcast series about a famous horse that went missing from Ireland here, Shergar.
Oh.
He's very, very passionate about it. He's like a documentary maker now, and it's a
really
interesting podcast. Yes, you can check that out.
That's awesome. Did you interview him? Did you talk to him?
No, I didn't, but I know people who did, and apparently he's a really nice guy, and he's really got a good head on his shoulders now, and he's really passionate about this. So check that out.
No, absolutely, that's cool.
Possibly a different speed of celebrity as Chuck Norris. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to?
Again, and there's so many making of, the making of, Lord of the Rings or whatever, and they're fluff pieces because everybody's all the time about how amazing the director is, right? And you don't really feel like you're getting any sense of anything real. It's like a promo piece for the movie. Nobody has anything real to say. It's all like, oh, Spielberg's so talented and whatever the thing is. But when I say this, I mean this, because I just won't say anything if I have something negative to say about him. He was the nicest guy.
That's great.
Totally genuine. I mean, the real deal, of course. And I love all the little things people say about, how do you, whatever, with Chuck Norris, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
There's so many of them, but just super cool, super amazing. So I did a guest spot on there, and when you're a guest spot on there, you're carrying the episode really, because Chuck kind of comes in as filler and does the arresting, and he's there. I mean, it's about him, but the guest stars kind of come in, and it's the storyline around a lot of that. And so I did that, and came back again for another episode of that, and then they did a spinoff. They wanted to do a spinoff show.
Oh, awesome!
And then they offered it to me, and I couldn't do it because I didn't love this. There was something about the script that I didn't love, and they wouldn't change it. And they kept offering me more money, like to the point where it was like 10 times what I would have made on Superboy, and I just couldn't do it. It was a point in my career where I believed I could pick and choose, and I could, but in retrospect. Yeah, I don't know.
And would that have shot in Texas? Was that part of it at all?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. If they were, it was called. I think it was called Sons of Thunder. And it was about a sons of this preacher that passes away, and then they end up, kind of taking over with, helping out in the town and all that. It was an interesting thing, but of course involved martial arts and all that stuff. So anyway, but yeah, Chuck Norris was great. He was super cool, and we had a great time, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I do want to know, you did have a 2 episode guest spot on Desperate Housewives as well, which has a couple of really, really interesting Superman connections, because obviously Terry Hatcher was on it, and
yes.
Dana Delaney was on it later on. I don't know if she was on it at that stage, though. I was just wondering, I know your storyline was more involved with Eva Longoria's character. Did you at any point meet Terry Hatcher and go, hey, just so you know?
I did. I think there was a scene I did with her, but I don't remember speaking with her, so I didn't have any dialogue that I remember. Okay. My wife knows her quite well. My wife's a jewelry designer, and so she knows her from that, and she's bought her jewelry and stuff. So I know, but I don't remember. I think I would have remembered, because I think she's super beautiful, and although I never saw the Dean Cain show, I heard it was really good. I heard it was really good. Smallville was really good too. I just never watched them. It's just one of those things that's kind of hard to watch, kind of, because you're like,
sure.
I don't remember that. But yeah, my character was mostly with Eva and her husband, and she was super cool. I think I was in the. I think it was was it the pilot I did? I can't remember, but it's all a blur because it's been a while. But I just did those 2 episodes. It wasn't like a big thing or whatever. So
these are just the thing us nerds think about when we're watching it. I wonder if they ever kind of said, hey,
I didn't.
Superman show.
No, I didn't. I don't remember talking to her. I think I would remember that.
So obviously, since that side of things, you've actually changed careers entirely. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do now?
Yeah, so I've always kind of had a spiritual path, or whatever that means, martial arts, and just being conscious about things, and just studying philosophy and all that. And I started kind of studying healing techniques, and a lot of it was crap. There's a lot of stuff out there that's just like whatever. But I found some things that were very powerful. And I was using it to help myself, because I was, as I said, I struggled with the bully stuff. And I think it led to some kind of, I don't want to say depression, because I can't claim that, but I don't want to claim that for many reasons. But I just felt like there's got to be more to life, right? So I started discovering these things, which actually helped me to improve myself, to improve my life, to help with chronic pain and stress and things like that. So I started studying that. And I had this sideline career doing that while I was doing the acting. So the acting paid the bills, but I did that for free, and I learned to help people. So probably around 15 or so years ago, I started charging, which was a big deal, because I had never felt like I don't want to charge for this. And it just exploded. I started working in hospitals. I worked at the Betty Ford Center in their pain management program with addiction. I worked at the Cedars-Sinai. I worked at the University of Southern California Medical Center, and started just training doctors and therapists in support for their patients. But now I have my own practice, where I just basically help people with quality of life issues, help them rewrite the narrative or the program they have running that affects their life. Because everything's based on past things that people still carry, still remember, the body remembers. So I'll help them clear that out of their body so that they can have a bigger perspective of what's possible, improve relationships, career, everything really. And I'm much better at that than I ever was as an actor. And I love doing it. I feel like it's my superpower. I feel like everybody has one, and that's mine, So I feel like that's one of our jobs as a human, is to find out what we love and what we're good at and do it. And and the grace of it all, if it's your career, that's even better. And I feel like I really hit it out of the park with this, because it hits all those boxes. It just checks them for me. So I'm so grateful.
Amazing.
Yeah. I can tell you the website. Well, if you go to johnnewton.com, that's my name, obviously, without the middle. It'll direct you to Health Beyond Belief. That's if anybody's interested. I don't know.
And this is work you do year round?
All the time. Yeah, I do weekly calls. I do private sessions. I speak to large groups. I actually share the tools to work on the whole group at the same time, which sounds a little woo-woo, which it kind of is. It's a little strange, but I love it. And it's only word of mouth. So I get constant referral of people that come and
I know you can't name names, but you mentioned on your site that you've had some pretty high profile clients and stuff like that. Am I right in saying that?
Academy Award winners, Olympic gold medalists, professional athletes of every single kind, famous politicians, all of that, and homeless. It's not like but just all kinds of everyone that you can imagine that I've had the opportunity. Some very, 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 very interesting people. That's all I can say. But yeah, I never reveal. I would just not do that. And then when I work with people in hospitals, like famous people, there's HIPAA laws that protect that you're not allowed to, talk about the patients there. That's actually legal. So I couldn't do it there. But yeah, it's just fun. It's just I love it. It's exciting. I find that since I moved away from Los Angeles, less of the really famous, kind of high-powered, but still I do. I had a presidential candidate. What was that? A few years ago. That was kind of interesting.
Wow.
And yeah, so just wild stuff. But I love doing it. So
incredible. That's amazing. One last thing, just to flip back to Superman that I completely forgot to ask you about, was the Rob Pratt animation stuff you've been involved with. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? The Superman classic cartoon and the Bizarro classic?
Yeah, so my wife and I were at this park in Burbank. I think it was like a Halloween thing, and our daughter was maybe 4 or 5 at the time. And I don't remember how we started talking, but I met Rob, and I didn't know who he was or anything. He recognized me because he's a Superman fan. That's what it was. And I was like, I started talking to him, and he's like this director at Disney. And I'm like, so we became fast friends, and we've been friends ever since. So anything Rob asked me to do, I'll do it. And he's a brilliant animator. I mean, his Superman shorts and his Flash. He's working on something now. I just did a voice for not that long ago. It's like a World War II kind of. What's the name of that character? Anyway, he has all these kind of original characters, but Rob is just always working on developing stuff and all that. And of course, he's always working with stuff at Disney and different shows and stuff. But he's just the nicest guy. He's like one of those people that you just meet him and he's just humble and super cool. You think a director, animator at Disney would have an attitude, and he has none. So really, really like him as a person. So
if anyone hasn't checked those out, by the way, they are incredible. Superman classic. You can watch them on YouTube, and they're just so well animated. I suppose one other thing we like to ask guests is that have you mentioned you didn't watch Smallville or Lois and Clark. Have you watched any of the movies or any of that kind of stuff, or are you in any way engaged with modern Superman stuff?
Oh yeah. So I liked Brandon Routh or Roth. I always say his name.
Routh. Yeah.
Routh. Yeah. And I'd met him in LA, but I felt he did a good job. I mean, it wasn't but I really liked him. I like people who are real. I like when I relate to a character. I don't love a lot of the sequels, like as far as the Marvel and DC world and universe, because it's just in your face CGI and there's no soul. I don't feel a soul. Sometimes it's there, but sometimes it's not. Yeah. And I just like the first Thor movie. I love that movie. It's such a great movie. The Deadpool's an exception. I love any Deadpool movie because but that's a separate conversation. I don't feel that should be in the same conversation as Superman and all that. I love the first Captain America movie. Had heart and soul. It was just but then you get these sequels and they're just like, I don't know who I'm rooting for. Do I care? Why are they throwing everybody under the bus? It's like every Mission Impossible James Bond movie. They just throw James Bond and whatever the Mission. Ethan Hunt, thank you. I was thinking, what's Tom Cruise's character name? They just throw him under the bus. I'm like, are you forgetting how many times this person has sacrificed his life for you, and the whole agency turns on him? It's like, what the hell? But anyway, that's a separate issue. But that's just the CGI lack of a really good, maybe a complicated story. I don't love, and I don't love the just in your face constant action. I'd rather have respites, where it's there, but I have a home theater, and I love loud and I love big sound especially, but some of those movies are hard.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that, and me and Alan are big defenders of kind of smaller, more character driven stuff with superheroes, and that kind of way. So again, that your show has that, I think.
Well, thank you. I think if our show had been 20 years later with some we were just they were just getting to the technology that could actually erase the wires.
Yeah.
And they had the technology. The editor told me secretly, he's like, they don't want to pay for it. So they had to, and I understand it, but it's time consuming. Back then it's, literally erasing pixels. Now they have software to do it, and it's much easier. But I just feel like, just even that movie I did Alive, if you watch the plane crash, it's all mechanical. There's no CGI. And, the plane crash, nowadays they would do such a better plane crash, but that's the world. So
amazing. Well, listen, John, I really want to thank you once again. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. And once again, Superboy season 1, big fan. So is there anything else you'd like to plug?
No, I'm not big on plugging. I just wanted to share in case people were interested in what I'm up to. I just I feel like it's really finding that thing you love. I don't know if anything about superheroes inspire us is like, what are they really about? They're not about themselves. They're about the community. They're about correcting things that are wrong about the world, which I think is important for all of us to do, even in a small way, but also finding our passion and then standing up for the people that can't stand up for themselves. I just love that part of every superhero movie, that the good guys win, maybe not if it's a sequel coming, maybe not in the first iteration, but eventually, because I feel like, we always hope that good wins over evil, because there's plenty of both in the world. And as they say, which wolf wins? It's the one we feed. So there you go.
Once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. I get that it might not be a subject you love talking about anymore, so we just really appreciate it. And
the more time goes by, the easier it is. I think if you'd asked me a year after, there's no chance in hell I would have done this. And I'm busy with work, but I had some time today, and as I said, I had that other interview scheduled that I've been putting off for months, literally. So yeah, awesome. I love it. Thank you for having me on.
Have a great day.
I have to say, Rob, I loved every minute of that interview. I listened to it. You sent me a copy of it, and I listened to it straight after.
Every minute?
Yeah, okay.
even when we were talking about Melrose Place?
Even when you were talking about Melrose Place. I've said it numerous times. You don't know what someone is going to be like. When you turn on the computer, you turn on that Zoom screen, and it goes from black to suddenly this person is there in front of you. And you're kind of going out on the ledge a little bit and putting yourself out there. You don't know what kind of personalities people have in real life. You don't know what their experience was or what their feelings are towards the thing that you love. And just because we love it so much, and you particular when it comes to season 1, love Superboy season 1, doesn't mean that they necessarily do. And we've said it before, sometimes a job is just a job and a gig is just a gig. But I have to say, listening to that interview, he's just a really nice, down-to-earth guy. He looks back on it, fondly in certain ways, and then he's more realistic about it in other ways. And I really appreciated that. There was, for want of a better word, there was no bullshit with him, and I really enjoyed that. No. I think he was honest, he was upfront, he told us what he felt, and I really appreciated his candor.
Yeah, and I think it helps that he really has moved beyond the whole concept of celebrity. He's not into acting anymore. He's not part of that world anymore, and he's found a much more noble calling in life. And I think that this is just a chapter in his life that he's kind of moved past, and so he's able to talk very, very honestly about it. I have to say, the story he told about the police cars and the extras driving the police cars, and you can hear him just like bursting into laughter talking about it.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the funniest moments of any of the interviews we've done. And similarly, I know we talked about this on Anthony's show as well, but I was so glad to be able to ask him about the basketball episode, which, by the way, genuinely, cards on the table, I genuinely do love that episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of Superboy, and that quote he had, it was like, you always, there are some things in life you never forget. Your first kiss, the first time you get your butt kicked, the first time you referee a basketball game. Incredible.
Your enthusiasm for season 1 really shone through, I thought, so much so that I kind of questioned whether he actually believed that you liked it as much as you were telling him you did.
He 100% did not believe me,
No.
and God bless him, and that's fine. But and I don't think I think whenever I say that, people are always just raising an eyebrow, like, what the hell is wrong with you? But man, I don't know what it is. It's just, there's something about that first season. Like, I was watching it very, 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 very late at night recently, as I so often do, and there's an episode where there's like an insurance scam at a theme park, and then somehow this leads Clark and TJ to discovering that there's this like 80s hair metal rock star that is kidnapping people and using their screams for his new rock album.
Love it.
Like,
love
everything
everything you said there. I love.
TJ goes into a discotheque and has to tell Clark Kent this information, and then Clark runs out of the discotheque and becomes Superboy. It's just the most 80s thing imaginable. And like, I think the later seasons don't have that they feel a lot more just sort of like they're trying to be more like the Superman movies. They're a lot more timeless. That first season is just so like unashamedly 80s. Everything about it I love, and I was delighted to talk to this guy.
When I was listening to the interview, I was kind of shouting back, no, he really does love it as much as he's telling you. He really does. You have to believe him. I was one of the reasons I was heartbroken about not getting to meet him was I wanted to tell him my story about Ice Ice Baby. So when
Cool as Ice,
Cool as Ice, that's it. Sorry, my apologies. That should be seared into my brain. When I was a kid, I had a babysitter. Her name, I think it was Edwina, which is not a very common name. Hi to Edwina if she listens to All Star Superfan. But for literally every Saturday night that my parents went out for the space of a year, she was obsessed with Vanilla Ice, and she would bring over Ice Ice Baby on VHS. And I would dread it all day because I knew I would have to sit there and watch. And she would be like, look at this part. And this is the part where he does this. And like, she was really excited about it. And I hated it. So I just thought it was very funny that, if that little kid could have told her at the time that sometime in the future he'd be chatting to John Haymes Newton.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I was thrilled that he had nice things to say. He had nice things to say about Vanilla Ice and all the other people he worked with and stuff. And he was just really level-headed. I was very impressed with the fact that he's a did he say a volunteer firefighter now?
Yeah.
You know what's more noble than that? And he just seemed like a really down to earth, nice guy. I really liked his story about Rob Pratt. I've spoken to Rob previously about my love for his two Superman shorts as well as his other works. So I'm thrilled that he had such a good experience from that as well. And he was really honest about his feelings towards the show and how it ended, and kind of set the record straight again on that, because obviously there was all these rumors, like he mentions about kind of a traffic violation and all that kind of stuff, and just the naivety of kind of including in his letter that he wrote, if you ever need fundraising or help with anything, and I'm sure that came from an honest to God good place, and it was picked up wrong, or they used it to kind of it was the stick that they used to break his contract or whatever. So I was sorry to hear that, and he obviously regrets that, but I really appreciated his honesty in relation to it.
Yeah, and the fact that he's so kind of chill about the whole thing. He knows there was nothing personal. It was money. It was this. It was that. He's moved on, and he's still seemingly friends with Elias Salkind. I don't know if they're like, if they're buddies right now, or if they're still.
Well, he had to ask you if he was dead, so probably not.
So probably not. But like, it seems like over the years they definitely seem to have made amends, which is really, really nice, you know.
Which is great. I would have liked to have known how that really kind of, how that, maybe it was just, social circles or whatever, because obviously he had this career after Superboy. It wasn't as if he lost that job and then he just, went into the ether and did other stuff. Like he had
quite a respectable career.
Yeah.
Like he was on the Untouchables. He was on, we talked about Desperate Housewives. He was on Walker, Texas Ranger. Like he did like lots of stuff.
A legitimately great film. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Alive. Alive is.
I don't know that one.
Alive is he plays a football player. I think a professional football player team. It's based on a true story of a team. I think it was college footballers who were in a plane crash. And crashed back in the 70s or 80s on top of some mountain range in the US. And it's just their story of trying to survive. And it gets really, really dark. Like it's a legitimately good film with some great acting in it. And he plays one of the teammates there who's involved in that car crash. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it won a lot of awards at the time and stuff. It was a legitimately great film. And he should be really proud of that. Some great work.
Very, very cool. So John Newton, welcome to come back on the podcast anytime. Who would you say is next on your bucket list in terms of actors who have actually played Clark Kent or Superman?
For me personally,
yes,
has to be Brandon. For me, it has to be Brandon.
I like that.
He followed Christopher Reeve's legacy with Superman.
I thought you were going to say he followed you on Twitter.
No. He followed Christopher Reeve's legacy with Superman Returns. He came back for the crossover, his other roles in the Arrowverse, all that stuff. It would have to be Brandon. I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with that guy.
Well, he's here right now tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm only joking.
What about you? What about you? Who would you go for?
I don't know, man. I've been pretty honest about this in the past.
Yep.
The actor thing is just I think because of the work I'm in and the types of people I work with a lot, it just I don't know. I feel like I've heard everything I need to hear from a lot of people who've done this work and there's been incredible interviews from so many of them over the years. It's not an itch I need to scratch.
Yeah.
I think. If I had to pick one actor that I don't think I've ever really heard interviewed about all of this stuff, it's probably John Shea.
Yes.
I think I've heard him like very, very briefly on some of the DVD extras, and I know he has done conventions here and there, with Dean Cain and stuff over the years, but he's not someone you hear a lot on these types of things, and I feel like he's probably one that I'd like to hear more from, because I think what little I have heard from him, he seems to have taken the role of Lex Luthor very, very seriously, and he's compared it to like Richard III and all this kind of stuff. Plus, he was in a movie with Kevin Conroy, and I think he knew Christopher Reeve as well. So like he has all this kind of, and he was one of these guys. He was very famous in the 70s and the 80s in these kind of movies of the week, as they were called back then, but basically big budget TV movies. So like he had this storied career before he was ever even on Lois and Clark. He's probably the main one that I'd love to maybe speak to. But other than that, I'm kind of good on actors, to be honest. But
and that's a fair point. I mean, you always get more personally from talking to the creatives behind these things, the writers and the artists and that kind of stuff,
and the fans, man. I get as much talking out to you and talking to Zach and talking to Anthony and Matt and all these people. Like that means as much to me as it does to talk to these performers and creators and stuff like that. And like I have to say, like, this might not mean the same thing to you, but like your story about Strand Electric and Movie Buff and all these weird little fan histories that people have, that's just as interesting and iconic to me. Or like TJ McDonald doing his cosplay, or Paul Martin, who interacts with us on the Facebook group, showing us his 35mm movies, or all these people who interact with us. Like those things are just as interesting to me as someone telling us about what it's like to wear a Superman costume. And I don't mean to dismiss the work of these actors or creators or anything like that, but just it all kind of is one thing to me.
And that's something we might, as we go in, we, like you said, we speak about it in our next episode more about the reasons behind the hiatus and stuff. But maybe that's something we look into more is kind of having fan spots on it where super fans who listen to the show can come on and talk to us about their love of the character. That'd be something I'd be very interested in, and I'd be meaning to have TJ on for quite some time. We were meant to have him on last year, and like he is just, when you talk about the impact that a fictional character has on someone and how that person can translate that into good deeds and good work in the real world, you can't meet better than TJ.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, just on that note, like I said in the next episode, but a bunch of people kind of reached out to us over the course of the hiatus.
Yeah.
Some people I had not even heard from before in the past. I didn't even know who they were, and it was really, really lovely. So just thank you once again to everyone who did, and keep listening to the show, and we will soldier on and keep trying to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
perfect. So, everybody, if you want to check us out, again, it's All Star Superfan on Facebook and X or Twitter. All Star Superfan on it's been a while since I've done this. All Star Superfan on Facebook and Instagram. All Star Superpod on Twitter or X, if whatever you want to call it. We're on BLUESKY, I think, as well. We're on Threads as well. Yes. I've actually left Twitter myself, except for the All Star Superfan page. I'm solely
I don't blame you.
I'm solely on Threads now, and I don't even know if I'm going to stick with that, to be honest. And at All Star Superpod at gmail.com if you want to send us an email or a voice note, and get those emails into us, guys, and we'll get back into it, start reading them out. If you want to send us a voicemail, we'll play it. And even look, if there's people you have an interest in us having on in future, let us know. We'd be very interested to hear about it.
Yeah, and if you have appeared in the Superman porn parody, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. It was my first day, and I'm sorry.
And on that note, take care, stay safe, stay super.